All right, so I will say the names that Celebrity gives their ships definitely helps write some of these intros. For this one, I'm going to have to take a moment of reflection. Hey, welcome to This is the Cruise. I'm Clint, and this is the channel where we look at upcoming cruise itineraries and try to find out if this is the cruise for you. I'm on a quest to try to find out why have we never cruised on Celebrity Cruise Line before. We've been on Carnival, of course, Princess Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, MSC Cruise Line, Norwegian Cruise Line, Holland America Cruise Line, but we have yet to cruise on Celebrity. And this series is piecing that together, and I think we're starting to see itinerary meets cost. And today we're going to do something a little bit different and look at this from a bit more of a data perspective. And I'm going to lift the curtain so you can see what I see when I'm researching these itineraries. As I've mentioned, throughout this year, is that my wife and I are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. And it just so happened that we had booked a 14-day cruise to Iceland. That was a wonderful trip with the family. We have some friends who are also celebrating their 25th anniversary, and they booked an 8-day cruise and invited us to celebrate with them. And we thought, that sounds pretty good. So we're going to join them on that. Well, by my math, and I am not a mathematician, 8 plus 14 is 22. And I was talking to my wife and I said, wouldn't it be great if we cruised 25 days this year for our 25th anniversary? And so we started looking, and wouldn't you know it, that Celebrity Reflection is doing 3-day cruises out of Fort Lauderdale, and that would get us to 25 days. So let's find out if we can say for any of these itineraries, this is the cruise. Before we jump in, really appreciate it if you hit that like button. It really, really helps me out. If you subscribe, that helps me out even more. If I have helped you make a decision, find an itinerary, maybe look at something a different way, you can, consider buying me a cup of coffee. There's a safe and secure link in the description below. That goes right into helping me work on this channel and improve the content for you. Or even better, you could join the channel and become a member. Just click that join button there on the channel screen. That would really help me out. And you get all kinds of extra perks, including discounts on merch and some extra emoji things you can do. And I will be giving sneak peeks and some beta access to my app that you're going to see a little bit today to my members. Okay, let's jump in. First, as always, we have to talk about the ship. We're looking at Celebrity Reflection today. This is a Solstice class ship that was built in 2012. She carries around 3,000, just over 3,000 passengers at, kind of a normal booking. And it seems like, I'm getting conflicting information here, but it seems like she was last refurbished in 2023, but it looks like it wasn't a deep refurbishment, just kind of a sprucing up. Cruise Critic gives her a score of 4, and I'm going to use that score in my itinerary ratings. So you'll see that throughout the video today. And I will say that these types of itineraries that Reflection is doing do not lend to a pristine, highly maintained, like perfectly maintained ship, which is probably partly why we're seeing a score of only 4 when Celebrity typically is looking at a 4.5 or 5 with their ship ratings. This is because the itineraries that she's doing are on the shorter side, and we're going to look at that here now. So let's jump into the charts real quick. We should probably go ahead and select Reflection just to make sure that we've got the right ship. And here we can see the scores. Let's take a look at where she's going. Primarily, it looks like she's spending a lot of time in the Bahamas, doing a little bit of Eastern Caribbean, Southern Caribbean, and some Western Caribbean, and then Southeast USA. That for sure is going to be Key West, as we can see here, where she's got a couple of stops in Key West. So looking at the destination ports, we can see it's really heavily focused on the Bahamas, with a few other locations sprinkled in, and some interesting ones with Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. that we're seeing in there as well. Let's take a look at what this really means from a region. I like to orient myself with maps. It just seems like I can understand what's happening a little bit better. So here we see that all of these itineraries are leaving from Fort Lauderdale, and she's stopping in Key West somewhat frequently on many of these itineraries. And like I mentioned, we know that she's spending quite a bit of time over here in Bahamas. You have Coco Cay. They call it Perfect Day at Coco Cay. That's a Royal Caribbean private island that she does visit. Bimini, which is super close to Fort Lauderdale. I mean, it's like you can almost see her there across the sea. And then Nassau, Bahamas as well. Then we have some stops, 3 stops in fact, that are part of the Western Caribbean: Cozumel, Grand Cayman, and Ocho Rios in Jamaica. And then if we go a little further south, we can see the Southern Caribbean stops would be Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. These would be the ABC Islands that we are seeing on these itineraries. I would classify all of these itineraries as short cruises for their destinations. The itineraries kind of break down into 3 main categories. We have short 3 to 4 night itineraries. 3 to 4 nights is a nice cruise. We talked about why I may be interested in a 3-night cruise. Some people just want that nice little weekend getaway. But they're still short cruises, right? Then we have what I would call short 5 to 6 night cruises. And I'm calling them short because when we look at the destinations that she's sailing to, they're really kind of Western Caribbean cruises, and those are often 7-day itineraries. So to do it in a 5 or 6 night duration, that feels short to me. And finally, there's a short 8-night itinerary, which many people wouldn't consider to be short, but those are the ones that go down to the ABC Islands. And if we come back here and look at the map, I will tell you, going from Fort Lauderdale, it takes 2 days to cruise down to Aruba, Bonaire, or Curacao, and then 2 days to cruise back. And to do that in 8 days means you are only stopping in those 3 destinations, though there are some variations that we'll look at here. That's a short ABC cruise. Many ABC cruises are 9, 10, 11, or more nights. That's the overview. Let's start looking at some of the actual itineraries. We'll begin by looking at the 3 or 4 night Bahama cruises. And I think that gives us, generally speaking, we do have this 1 5-night Key West and Perfect Day plus Bahamas. They're just calling it the Key West and Perfect Day itinerary. And this one has a couple of sailings. It's an outlier. And while we're generally going to look at the 3 or 4 night itineraries, we can see that this 5-night scores highest. And that's because of the number of stops. The most stops you can have on a 3-night cruise is 2 stops, which makes you think that if you did a 4-night cruise, you could have 3 stops. And if you did a 5-night cruise, you could have 4 stops. But that's just not how Celebrity does it. And with this 5-night, we are getting only 3 stops. It just happens to be that we are going to Key West, Bimini, and having a Perfect Day at Coco Cay. It's a nice itinerary. It's 5 nights. And depending on the price, may be a good value for you. And if the dates work for you, I wouldn't have a problem doing that one. But like I said, we're going to kind of focus here on the 3 and 4 night itineraries. As I'm looking at this though, I'm seeing one that is really an outlier. And I did mention that, the most stops we could do on a 3-night cruise is 2 stops. This guy over here is a 3-night Perfect Day getaway. And when we look at it, she is only going to Coco Cay. And that means that her score is really going to suffer because she doesn't have the other destinations to pull from. And I know I've had comments on my channel where some people say, look, I don't care about the stops. I want to be on the ship. Essentially, it could be all sea days for me. And that's fine. This channel is focused really more on maximizing your destinations. And that's just kind of what I prefer. Personally, I want to have as many stops as possible. However, let's just say that we threw in another destination in this itinerary and you preferred to be on the ship. Well, you can always stay on the ship. This just gives you options. And that's what I would like to see. And that's kind of my counterpoint argument to, I don't care where we go, I just want to be on the ship. Well, you can always stay on the ship. But what's really nice is when you have a really good stop. If you don't want to get off, you don't have to, and more people will get off, which means you have the ship more to yourself, which I like. And you'll often hear me say with these itineraries, if they're scoring low, I may say something to the effect of, look, if the price is right, if it's less than $100 a day, or what have you, go for it, because almost any cruise is better than no cruise. And I will say, with this itinerary, it only goes to Perfect Day at Coco Cay if the price is right. Why not do it? But I do have another way to look at these scores, and that is the Clint's Cruisability cost per cost. So how much value are we getting for the dollar spent? And in this case, the lower the bars, the better. And the itinerary that clearly stands out above them all is the 3-night Perfect Day getaway. It is, at the time of filming, for what you get out of the cruise, for what you get out of the itinerary, is the worst value. It's just an interesting way to look at it. If you've got the budget and the dates and times work, any cruise almost is better than no cruise. This one certainly is not a bad cruise. Like, you're going to have a good time. And Perfect Day at Coco Cay is a great island. It just could be better. Okay, so this 3-night cruise only stops in Coco Cay and gets a Clint's Cruisability score of 10.31. Kind of quickly look at the score here, a variety score of 1.5. I always count the number of countries that to make up the variety score, and then I deduct from that score if the port to sea day ratio doesn't maintain at least a 2 ports to 1 sea day ratio. In this case, we have 1 stop and 2 sea days. It's the inverse. It's 1 stop too few to be able to keep the variety score without any deductions. So it just gets a 1.5 for variety. The ship score again of 4, which is fine. And then we're solely relying on what we could do in Fort Lauderdale and what we could do in Coco Cay for the rest of the score, which gives us a 10.31 after it runs through the algorithm of weighted averages. And I do have to say that this is the lowest scoring celebrity itinerary this 2024-2025 cruise season. It was going to come up on one of these videos, and here it is. So let's see, is there a better option? Well, we talked about the 5-night, we get that one, but then we have 2 that score much, much better. And one of them is actually the 4-night Key West and Perfect Day, and the other is the 3-night Key West and Perfect Day. And the reason that is the same score is because there's no deduction for that extra sea day on that 4-night. The 4-night goes to Key West and Perfect Day and has a sea day in the mix. And that's pretty nice, actually. I don't have a problem with that at all. Let me just see where that sea day is. In fact, that sea day is really, really nice because it is after you've just been outside in the very incredible private island of Perfect Day Coco Cay. So now you get back on the ship, and while they could get you from Coco Cay back to Fort Lauderdale overnight, they don't. They take their time. You get to spend the next day at sea on the ship, enjoying the ship and relaxing and kind of easing back in, rather than frenetic energy, frenetic activity, and then the next morning you wake up and you got to travel home. So I really, really like that aspect of this itinerary, and it scores the same. If you have the 4 days versus only having the 3 days, you can see it may be a better choice, and if the budget is there, of course. I really do actually like that for a 4-night or a 3-night itinerary. These get a Clint's Cruisability score of 13.27, and the 5-night at 15.31. You can see it just adds Bimini to that exact same itinerary. What's interesting to me is that they could have actually gotten the same itinerary. They could have added Bimini to the 4-night, and that would have fit in there as well. Though you would have had all stops. You could have stayed on the ship when you got to Bimini, but you would have all stops and no sea days. But that would have pulled the score up to 15.31 for that 4-night. So, I'm not sure how well Celebrity's doing at maybe optimizing for port-intensive itineraries here. And that has been what we've been seeing. Okay, let's keep going. The ABC Islands. We'll get to the 6 days here in a second, but let's just quickly change our view here in the data. Okay, so we just lost power. It's thunderstorming outside right now, and the internet went down, so had to kind of reset here. Let me just get back into where I was. So we're talking about the ABC cruises, the Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao cruises. Let's take a look. We know that they all go to Aruba, so now we're looking at just the 3 itineraries here. And again, we're seeing one that's scoring a bit less than the others. So if we look at this, let's just see what's going on here. Well, we're going to Aruba, we're going to Curacao, so there's no B in this ABC, Aruba, Curacao, and then Nassau. And substituting Bonaire for Nassau is, well, there's really almost no comparison between those 2 islands. Bonaire is so nice, so beautiful. And Nassau has some nice parts, but there's significant safety issues with Nassau, which is really bringing this itinerary down. The Aruba, Curacao, Bahamas itinerary that sails on March 29th gets a Clint's cruisability score of 15.42. It's just not great. And I just can't really get behind this one. This is an itinerary that I honestly don't think I would book unless it was being given to me. It's just really weak. However, the other 2 itineraries, there's some differences here. The highest scoring itinerary is in fact the Aruba, Curacao, and Cayman itinerary. This one has one sailing that I was able to see. Currently, it's November 9th. When I originally put this together, I was doing this itinerary 3 times, but they're shuffling and tweaking some of the sailings. So this one here is scoring the highest. You're really substituting again Bonaire for, you're losing the B of the ABCs, but you're going to Grand Cayman, which is a much nicer island than Nassau. And actually, when I was thinking really hard and looking at the scores and where they're slightly different, I actually think the Cayman Islands in some ways are a little bit nicer than Bonaire by itself. Bonaire has some great snorkeling, but so does Cayman. Bonaire's city is just so. But Cayman Islands have beautiful beach. I mean, there's just a lot going on between the 2, but they're very, very similar. So I think this is a fair trade or fair swap, if you will, in destinations. Have you been to Grand Cayman and Bonaire? To those 2, if you've been to both, I want to know in the comments below, which one do you prefer? Which one's better for you? Let me know. I think they're both great and both have their strengths and honestly very little weaknesses, but let me know what you think. And then finally, if I were to choose between one of these 3 ABC itineraries or, Aruba, Curacao itineraries, it would be the Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao itinerary. Yes, Cayman Islands are very nice, but it takes you 2 days to cruise down to those 3 islands. It's going to take you 2 days to make your way back, at least. If you're going down there, go to all 3. Get them all in. Don't miss them. They are distinct from each other, even though they're all part of the same country, more or less. And they're all nice in their own way. So I loved visiting all 3 of them. It's just that this whole 8-night thing to get down there, this whole 8-night itinerary that Celebrity is doing, it's not really that strong. And Celebrity does have some better ABC itineraries. They even have an 11-night one. But when we went down there, we were on a 10-night. We had at the ABC stops, and then we had 3 other stops for a total of 6 stops. Celebrity is not doing that. You can get that, I think, on their 11-night itineraries. But I know for a fact that you can do a 10-night and get 6 stops in. It's just Celebrity isn't doing it. So I don't know. If you know why they're not doing that or why they do it this way, let me know in the comments below. I'm curious to see what you think. Okay, now let's look at those 6-night itineraries. All of them go to Grand Cayman. So let's go ahead and just remove the others here. 2 of these will go to Cozumel. They choose between the Bahama Islands of Nassau or Bimini. You're not going to go to both. You're going to go to one or the other. And you can see here that they all score about the same. There's a 6-night Bahamas, Mexico, and Cayman. That one goes to Nassau. As the Bahama Island, that gets a 15.66 Clint cruisability score. There's the 6-night Bahamas, Mexico, and Grand Cayman. That goes to Bimini. That gets a 16.06 score, like half a point or less than half a point better. Or there's the 6-night Grand Cayman, Jamaica, and Bahamas. And again, Bimini there, and that's a 16.11. So these are practically tied. If you have 6 nights and you don't have 7, then any of these are going to be fine. You're leaving from Fort Lauderdale. It's a convenient place to cruise from. But to me, these itineraries seemed like standard fare. Nothing really stood out to where I was looking at these going, wow, there's something special about that. None of these go to Coco Cay. They don't go to Royal Caribbean's best Bahama island. I've been to Cozumel many, many times, and it's fine, but you start after a while running out of new things to do. If you could cruise to either Cozumel, or if you were going to cruise to Jamaica, any of the ports in Jamaica, what would you prefer, Jamaica or Cozumel? I definitely have my opinion, and I can tell you the score bears it out. I'd go to Jamaica, but it just edges it. It just edges it out. We went whitewater rafting in Jamaica. That was pretty awesome, I gotta say. But we've done some pretty cool things in Cozumel too. All right, so what's the cruise? Well, after looking at these, I think you could maybe tell by how excited I got when I was talking about the 4-night Key West and Perfect Day itinerary. I think this is the best one that Reflection is doing upon reflection and some data analysis. If we did this one, it would put us at 26 days. So maybe we do this 3-day and tack it on to our 22 days of having cruised for our 25th anniversary this year. We'll see. There are options for 3-day cruises. There's a lot of options out there, and we are putting them in the mix and looking at them. And because it's a 3-day little getaway and we got to do it over the weekend, the dates really matter, the cost, so we're not going to splurge and go all out. So do we do that on a kind of standard cruise line like Carnival, Norwegian, Royal, MSC, or do we go a little bit more upscale with Holland, Celebrity, or Princess, do something more premium? We're trying to figure that out now. What do you think we should do? Let me know. And in the meantime, gotta say, stay happy, stay healthy, stay cruising.